Now I will go ahead and introduce our next speaker, Fabrizio Ferri-Benedetti. Fabrizio goes by he, him, and they, them pronouns. He's a technical UX and programmer writer with strong technical skills, with specialties in developer and API documentation, especially for observability and data tools. You can read more from him at his blog, Paso Uno, and he's going to talk to us about failing well, a practical guide to growth for technical writers.
Thank you. Check, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. I have the Madonna microphone. It's cool. So, failing well, that's kind of an oxymoron, yeah, in a way, but I like that kind of rhetorical figure of speech. Today's talk originated from a couple blog posts that you might have read on my blog. One was about how to fail as a technical writer. Of course, it has to be like a how-to. And another post was how to grow as a technical writer. And usually, I don't like, it's just me, I don't like self-help, motivational crap. I just don't like it, I cannot stand it. But I felt compelled last year and this year to write some words of encouragement for friends who are going through a rough time. I'm not going to blame AI. We can blame many factors there. It's just a reality. The reality is that it's been like a rough market and a rough situation for not just for technical writers, but in general, all kind of humanists in tech. So I felt compelled to somehow share what I think is maybe the problem sometimes when we self-declare failure, and what the solution could be maybe for that, but your mileage might vary, of course. So failure, like Sisyphus here, is kind of baked into the role for technical writers. We work in places where documentation is undervalued, under-resourced, an afterthought, and in this context, failure becomes like a way of life. We fail to convey the importance of words. We fail to get decision makers to listen. We fail to change how organizations work. And how else do we change how a product communicates if not through organizational change? Sometimes, sadly, we give up, or we go other way and bury our keywords in the sand and eager to embrace simple requests. But let's talk about what that means. When do we fail? What does fail looks like for a technical writer? So I'm going to run through some scenarios. Let's see if they sound familiar to you. First, when we fail to raise docs awareness. I failed numerous times in my career at convincing stakeholders that we needed more resources for docs. People would listen to my arguments, and then nothing happened. I would insist a few more times. It was never a heated debate. I wish it was. I like getting in a good discussion, but it was more like getting a from a friend that isn't really paying attention. Looking back, the fact that they agreed to listen at all was a win. That was positive. They were there. They weren't avoiding me. But I couldn't see their hidden agendas, their real worries, what they were actually prioritizing. Maybe if I had better metrics, better documentation, observability, I could have made more convincing arguments. And I did accomplish change sometimes, but it was almost always self-powered, never the kind of change I wanted. So this is what failure looks like when you build these comprehensive knowledge base and product managers still don't read it. Or when engineers bypass your docs and ask the same questions in Slack that you already answered a million times in the docs. So it's not about writing quality. It's about a culture that hasn't learned to value documentation as a real product. You also we fail when we fail to focus on what matters. And here we have the monk here, this merry garden of words. And you know, there are moments in a tech writer's life of very stability. Oh gosh, I love those. You land a good job, good position, you're tending your garden of words, progressively isolating yourself from the struggles around you. It's the dream. It's like, in this idyllic oasis of grammar, you get occasional news about products rising and falling, little dramas that become release notes, and then someone sends a doc's feedback ticket and you forget all about it. Pleasant, right? Yeah. But this phase is rife with failure. Immersed in doc's depth and weekly release notes, I failed to focus on what would have actually made a difference. I'm not saying maintenance work is useless, but there's a numbness to it that makes it hard to look outside the cloister to perceive what users and stakeholders actually need. We are drowning in documentation depth, rewriting legacy content nobody reads, with the real user pain points going undocumented. We are stuck maintaining 17 versions of installation guides instead of creating the conceptual docs that would help users actually understand the product. And this happens when we are reactive instead of strategic. We fail when we fail to collaborate with others. Maybe after years in that garden of words, something shifts. Some technical writers start feeling contemptuous of non-writers. They know their craft. They've saved the day before with docs updates. There was a time when they sought out developers and product managers, but not anymore. They're senior now, whatever that means, and that's enough to shun anything outside their turf. How sad. This unwillingness to blur boundaries is a spectacular way of failing. Our job is that of a bridge. We connect teams and products through words and concepts. Documentation is collaborative work. Someone said once, the code base isn't a good place for devs and writers to bond. Well, I think everywhere is a good place for us to work together. We can't do this alone. We end up in silos, documenting based on guesswork. We cannot let that happen. Fine picture. We fail when we fail to change our ways. I'm sorry for any data practitioners. It's just a tongue-in-cheek thing here. Technical writers, like developers, get attached to tools that were before. And you heard in the previous speech about tooling and the questions. That's dangerous. I mean, Docker, Data, Confluence, Gatsby, Martin, you name it. You use those, and one day we find out times have changed. Different tool chain is needed, more flexible mindset required. What worked before might not work in the future. Well, other times maybe you are stuck using the same processes, same approaches that worked for a year now. They're not going to work. So I think it's a failure when you hyper-specialize in one tool without focusing on what are the transferable learnings. So if data disappears tomorrow, the underlying lessons in control reuse still matter. That's the important thing you have to take away from using a tool, not the tool itself. Tools just come and go. So what's failure anyway? Let me sip a bit of water here. What's failure anyway? Let me reframe this a bit. Like you might notice, I haven't focused on things like not knowing enough tech, not looking at analytics enough, etc., not knowing grammar, whatever. That's because I believe failure is always systemic. Most tech writers I know try hard. They really do. They do their best at an individual level. It's what surrounds them that determines what we call failure. So when we talk about failure in tech writing, we're really talking about three things. First, the disconnect between what's necessary and what's allowed. You know what your docs need. You've done the research. You understand the gaps. You ask the questions. You can see exactly what will make the difference, but you can't get the headcount. You can get access to the information. You can't get time in the sprint. So this painful gap between what you know needs to happen and what the organization lets you do, that's not your failure. It's a structural problem. Second, failure is the painful reflection of the system we are forced to navigate. Every time a docs initiative fails, it reflects back to us where documentation sits in the hierarchy. It shows us who has power, what gets prioritized, what gets deferred. Failed documentation projects are like litmus tests. They reveal the health of the organization's information culture. And often what they reveal isn't pretty. Third, it's not being able to exit a zone where we lack power or resources. We usually know what works best for the documentation, but we're often not in a position to steer the orgs on our own. It's it's a labor of persuasion, of patience. It'll always be this way, at least until we get the chief documentation officer to be like the norm in companies. Don't count on that, though. I don't see it happening anytime soon. Sometimes you're stuck in a team where documentation will never be properly supported. Maybe you can't leave because of the job market or the location, any number of reasons. And being trapped in that situation is not a failure, it's something you're trying to manage anyway. Sorry. So what do we say to the god of failure? Right. A bit louder, please.
Not today.
Thank you. So if failure is inevitable, which is not a wholesome message, but we're gonna get to the wholesome side of things. So if it's structural rather than personal, what do we do? How do we respond? Well, first of all, I would say, do not fail despite doing good work. Tweak the mindset a little bit, like fail because you're doing work that matters. You can't do this because you know what is at stake. You've seen how lost people are when using tech. If they ask for metrics, for an estimate of value, smile, craft some. Few things we do are entirely rational. Tech products aren't rational either. We create experiences. We do art using bits and silicon. This is not science. So you can make it up. It's no, it's for the greater good. So go forth and fail defending tech writing like you would defend poetry or music or design, because it's putting humanity back at the center, and humanity is all that matters when we're building things for other human beings. We don't avoid failure. We outgrow it. The answer isn't to work harder to prevent failure. You cannot. The systems are what they are. The answer is to grow beyond the conditions that create failure, to develop skills, influence, strategic thinking that let you change the systems themselves. You want to fail differently, fail better. Sorry. Why growing? Why growing? So why the focus on growth? Why not just, accept the status quo and do your job and, Well, because you want, of course. I mean, honestly, the simple reason to grow is because you want to, because you're curious, because you're restless, you have ideas on how things could be better. Your motivation doesn't really matter as long as you're working toward a goal. Some motivators are extrinsic, like better pay, job security, recognition. Others are more intrinsic, like feeling more competent, less anxious. All of them are valid reasons for growing, to push yourself a bit more if that's what you want. One thing, just a little note here, the ethics of growing matter when you're growing against others. Don't do that. Don't grow despite other people. It's messy and silly. Just grow for yourself. If you cannot grow, here's a sanity check before I go further. I'm assuming you chose tech writing as a career, or at least you've grown to like it, I hope. That you're working for a reasonably fair employer, that you find this work engaging and important. If none of that checks out, stop. You don't need to listen further. If you are in an environment where growth isn't possible when you're blocked, then growth might mean just leaving. It's okay. It's just another way of growing. If you're enduring circumstances that make work undesirable or unbearable, seek change, not growth. Change. Like change your team, the company, your specialization. Don't spend years trapped in something that you don't like, that is crashing your development. And here's something that some of you might not agree with, but I found that this is just the reality of things, is no matter work you pull is never enough. You cannot solve systemic problems through sheer volume. Being incredibly productive is nice, but it's not the best way to grow. It signals that you hit a performance ceiling. You're extremely proficient in certain tasks. You'll be seen as dependable, maybe a bit greedy, ready to devour tickets and clean the backlog. That's good when you're junior, trying to get to the mid-level, but that's it. You'll be stuck in a cycle of business as usual activities away from real impact. None of that, working more hours, taking more projects, documenting more features, none of that addresses the root causes of documentation failure. You will burn out trying to compensate for organizational dysfunction through personal effort, and that's not good. That's not cool, and I've gone through that too. Growth requires qualitative change, not just quantitative. For many people, just doing quantity is okay. If growing is not on your to-do list, keeping the engine running is valuable. It is. But let me repeat this. Growth requires qualitative change. It's about changing how you work. In tech writing, that means finding new ways to solve novel problems, tackling issue generators at the source. This diagram here, taken from my blog. In general, what does it mean to be a senior writer? So in general, you go to a career ladder, and senior level individual contributor is someone who is able to work without guidance and tackle complex tasks and projects with little supervision. They can go to the bathroom alone, and doing what's best to support a product, and the teams behind it this is very uncontroversial and bland, and it's pretty much like the orange line you see here, which is called stagnant seniority. Sometimes seniority, is awarded based on tenure, but that's rarely the norm in tech. The other pattern, the stepped pattern, is what I call dynamic seniority, and that's really is the kind of growth that helps you achieve personal goals and maybe lead to promotion also. The stagnant line is what I call the little death of ambition. So, wow, big words, I know. A reminder, again, as I told you, I despise self-help and all that stuff. This is not a hustle culture pamphlet. No. That ideal stepped growth pattern I'm describing can only be achieved under optimal circumstances. Maybe you want to aim for that, but I'm not telling you to work weekends, to side hustle your way to success, to optimize every moment for productivity. That's toxic. Don't do that. Growth happens within the boundaries of sustainable life, if you can. If you need to step back because of care responsibility, health issues, retire, that's okay too. This is not about hustling, really. Because life happens. The line is aspirational. As a tech writer, my career has been a mix of the two lines you've seen before. Sometimes I plateaued in the stagnant phase, longer than I wanted, and because of reasons that were sometimes beyond me. And that's completely normal. There are moments for growth and moments for resting, and that's totally okay. But when you do want to grow, then you might follow maybe some of these ideas here. Which leads us to the wholesome part. We finish with the depressive slides. I'm going to sip some water. All right, so if growth is about qualitative change, how do we actually do that? Well, I think it comes down to three things: restlessness, courage, and generosity. This is where, if we have some epic music, you can cue epic music, but these are the principles that unlock qualitative growth, and I thought about them based on my experience. And here is the nerdy moment. That is a fair lord and a great captain of men, if Gondor has such men still in these days of fading. Great must have been his glory in the days of its rising, says Legolas when he sees Prince Himrahil before the big battle at the end of Lord of the Rings. And what strikes me, about this quote is the idea that even in decline, even when systems are failing, individuals can still embody excellence. That's often our situation, working in orgs that haven't figured out how to properly value documentation, but we can still be Prince Himmerhill, against like the mounting odds and the horde of orcs coming to our gates. Yeah, that's moving. Now to something more practical, though. You can see this horde. It's not time for that. First of all, first tip is become a communicator and advocate of your craft. Being good is not enough. Let me repeat that. Being good is not enough. And connecting to one of the lightning talks by David, you should really share what you're doing. You should really raise your voice in a wholesome way and let the world know about the great stuff you're doing. Otherwise, people just will not realize what you're doing until it's too late. So you have to become an ambassador of your craft and start making yourself heard everywhere. One of the first things I did at a startup was sending an email to the team about what a technical writer is. And that became my first blog post. If you search for it, that's the email I sent internally. Outside of work is also important. Tech writing, we have to develop this sense of pride in technical communication as a vital discipline. This is the restlessness bit. Growing means not just doing tech writing, but also speaking about it, writing about it, teaching it, making noise about it. So start a blog, give internal talks, present at conferences, write articles, don't shy away from intellectual engagement. Contribute your thoughts, your verse, your theories, your errors. Share also your failures, why not? Some call it thought leadership. I think it's just showing up and owning the conversation around what we do and why it matters. Own the conversation, okay? Then think deeply about what you're doing, then act accordingly. This is perhaps the most significant shift is moving from passive autopilot to active critical reflection. It's easy to get caught in the merry garden of words, in the rhythm of the daily tasks, and the Kanban board, to content yourself, with that. But genuine growth requires stepping back, consciously thinking about what you're doing, why you're doing it that way, and whether there are better approaches. This is also restlessness, like refusing to just execute without reflection. To take time to analyze your processes, your outcomes, your challenges. Start engaging with your work on a deeper level. Maybe develop your own frameworks, right? You don't have to use the Ataxis for everything. Maybe you have a variant. You can develop that. It's all open source. You can do that. Articulate the principles behind your writing, etc. Seek the storms. Seek the problems and, go face them and then tell the world what you did about it. Again, epic music. Then have the courage to act on what you discovered, even if that means challenging established practices. Deep thinking without action is just philosophy. Action without thinking is just busy work. You need both. Forge a new path, encourage others. Finding new paths mean, seeking out, creating novel solutions to docs challenges. Sometimes even silly experiments in a hackathon hold value when you share the findings. There are no silly questions there. And, but now you can be like a Steve Wozniak and create invent a splendid system in your basement, but it's not going to be useful to anyone if you don't socialize it. This is where generosity comes in. When you figure out a better way to do something, a new tool, a different process, you share it, you document it, you teach others. Don't hoard your knowledge or innovations. The tech writing community is small. We are stronger when we learn from each other. This elevates the capabilities of the entire community. Embrace perpetual learning and bold experimentation. Tech never sits still, neither should you. A mark of what I call dynamic seniority is an insatiable, almost journalistic appetite for what's new and a commitment to not just keeping up, but actively exploring the frontiers of our field. Restlessness again. The documentation landscape is changing constantly. We are talking about it. We know AI is out there. So new tools, new methodologies. Never stop the learning process. Constantly challenge yourself with new tools, new methodologies, new tech. Try out the LLMs. Go to a conference and try that out. We had one this morning about MCP servers. Stay curious. Try things. Learn to code. If you're a Doxis code, curious person. Experiment with new content formats. There are many ways of keeping your learning alive. Does this mean you have to chase all the latest shiny objects without thinking? No. You should tailgate them, study them, report your findings, and decide whether to use them or not. My passion for AI, for example, if you've been following me, you know that I'm writing quite a lot about AI recently. So it doesn't turn me into a mindless GPT cheerleader. I could write a pretty convincing critique of AI-generated docs because I know how they work. So to criticize something, I believe you have to know it first, not because you need to be everything to everyone, but because the breadth of knowledge gives you more ways to solve problems and also sometimes choose the tools of your work. Lastly, find the courage to speak up. There's a quiet power in observation, and often we are known to be very quiet, technical writers. But growth, I think, demands that we translate those observations into action. That frequently means speaking up. So, for example, challenging a process that isn't serving users, questioning an assumption that could lead to poor documentation, and advocating for resources that would genuinely make a difference and improve the quality of information. Tom Johnson wrote about this in a blog post. He was reviewing a book. He said, calling out bullshit should be in our tech writers' DNA. We shouldn't hesitate to voice concern even when it leads to awkward or uncomfortable situation, as this is part of the constitution of knowledge. Remaining quiet does disservice to truth. This might be the hardest one. Like, the courage means speaking up in meetings when documentation gets cut from the scope, pushing back when you're asked to document something fundamentally broken instead of fixing it. You do know the situation, right? Like, telling leadership that no, 2 weeks is not enough time to document an entire feature. It means advocating for your team when you are understaffed. It's not comfortable, it's not fun, it requires willingness to disrupt the status quo. And you might also worry about being seen as difficult or negative, but it might alienate some folks, but those who get it will follow you. Well, here, quoting Karl Popper, the future is open. Where does all this lead? Well, I want you to leave here feeling less alone in your struggle. That's the goal I would like to achieve with this talk. Our success is determined by how confident and persuasive we are in promoting the importance of words in tech. The future of our profession is not predetermined. That's why I say it's open. Whether documentation becomes increasingly marginalized or increasingly central to product development depends on whether we can articulate and demonstrate its value. So to quote a content strategist, Christina Halverson, fake it till you make it. We are humanists in tech. We are not building dams, bridges, or saving patients in the operation room. Luckily. Not with the Python library we're documenting anyway. But the measure of our success is in what we call work, is how confident and persuasive we are in promoting the importance of words in tech. To be a great technical writer, you just need to care. So dive in and swim. Look just, how to do that. Look at what we are becoming. This is also taken from my blog. Like, this diagram show the many hats, the many identities and specializations emerging in our field. We are not a monolithic group doing identical work. We are expanding, diversifying, finding new ways to apply our skills, new places where our expertise matters. You might gravitate towards the maker strain, or maybe more towards the storyteller variant, or maybe you are a full stack person or a webmaster in disguise. That happens. It's a bit from the 90s. You might know about webmasters. But, whatever your path, you're still part of a profession that bridges the gap between humans and machines. And in this era where AI is reshaping pretty much everything, that bridging role is more important than ever. The title on your business card might change, but the essence of what you do, making the complex clear, endures. So now it's your turn. You get to decide what kind of technical writer you want to become, what path you want to forge, and what you want to contribute. You don't have to do everything I've suggested, or not at all. You don't have to grow in any particular direction or talent, but the core message is that you have agency here, more than what you might think. And let me end with a quote that I love from Nick Cave. Hopefulness is not a neutral position. It is adversarial. It is the warrior emotion that can lay waste to cynicism. I love this quote because it captures something essential about our work. Believing that documentation can be better, that organization can learn to value information, that we can grow and change our circumstances, is not naive. It's an active stance against the cynicism that says that nothing will ever change. Hope is work. It is a decision to keep trying, keep advocating, keep building, even when the systems around us are resistant. That's, I think, what makes this quote so powerful. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe give you a moment to catch your breath. Pass you this microphone.
Do I need that if I have the,
good point.
the Madonna thing?
Then I will. Just to get one question out of the way, what does Fabrizio's T-shirt say?
Oh, AI must read the FE manual. Yeah. Sorry, I was about to say the word.
All good. But yes, thank you. I think, we can see in the comments from Slido and a lot of the questions there that your talk definitely resonated with a lot of people, and it's really wonderful to hear such a compassionate confrontation of the sense of failure, because so many of us feel it as an isolating existence, and as you pointed out, it's systemic. It's not an individual thing.
Yeah, I think so.
So, some questions.
Okay.
Lots of hows. I think maybe we can summarize them in terms of digging deeper to a lot of the hows that you did address in your talk. Saad had asked, for example, what suggestion do you have, or might you have, for affecting behavioral change in attitudes toward documentation? And how could I get an engineer or developer to read my knowledge base, for example?
Of course, that depends on the situation. There's a bit of anthropology involved, and you have a different corporate culture, company culture, at team level. There are rituals, and I think in general, leading by example and feeling like very passionate about what you're doing and sending out even just doing an internal talk to engineers.
Embodying.
Yes. I think that will at least work with some, and that's, you don't need to change everybody. You don't want that, but you can change some minds already, and that's a win. So, yeah.
Okay. Another question. How might one recognize some signs or red flags or signs or red flags that one might be on a potential path to unfathomable failure and dreadful doom? Woo! No pressure.
So if your skin turns gray and you have red streaks and the eyes turn red, no, not like that. You become a Sith. No. Sorry, but I'm such a huge nerd. It really, this is like mental health. If you don't feel well, that's the only sign you need. There's no external arbiter saying you are failing. It's you feeling maybe out of place or sad or that you're not growing. This is something you do for yourself. So it's hard to tell. Like, of course, you can ask people whether you're failing or not, but first and foremost, you have to answer yourself that question. You have to feel where you are and if you are happy. And maybe if you're happy with the situation, you don't need to do anything, you know.
Failure is something that you might define just for yourself then?
I think so.
Okay. Maybe just one more question. As you pointed out, a great way to embody these values, restlessness, courageousness, generosity, one way is to just speak.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it's not just about speaking, but a matter of getting started. So do you have any suggestions for places, spaces to speak?
Here, I would say, you know, there's so many ways these days. Like, you can create your own podcasts. I know some folks have done that. Maybe they have a little audience, small audience, but that's okay. I mean, you don't have to. We're not rock stars or anything. We don't want to be that. You can create your blog. You can go to conferences like this. I mean, I started with Reddit docs, and you know, then I created my blog, and it all sort of snowballed. Yeah, that's, I think, I cannot think of something really special other than use any mean at your disposal to communicate, and there's no lack of places and venues and chances to do that. So I want to see you next year talking here.
Or even today, tomorrow at the unconference.
Yes.
Or, you know, limitless opportunities. Okay, that's all the time we have. So thank you once more, and thank you everybody for your questions.